Okay, we're going to start with a simple design. The idea is we want to have areas, shapes that are dark colors, areas that are light colors, and areas where we let the paper show through. So I've kind of sketched out my design. I want to keep everything relatively simple. I don't want too much detail. So I sketched it out and then I went back in and kind of drew more sure lines and kind of simplified and abstracted things a lot. And now I'm going to color it in with the marker, and we'll see what that looks like. Another quick note on your design: if you write anything, it needs to be written backwards because it's going to print in reverse. So you need to figure out how to write your letters both backwards and your writing so that it's going in reverse order. Alright, so here's the marker version. This is pretty close to what our finished prints are going to look like if everything works out correctly. So we've got a black section, or black shapes. You've got a middle section, which are purple in this case, and a white section where the paper shows through. There's going to be any dark color mixed with or paired with any light color. It doesn't really matter. And we're going to be changing the colors we use as we print. So when you do the markers, it doesn't really matter what colors you use. It's just to kind of show what everything's going to look like and give you a visual picture. For the next step here, I'll cut out all of the white areas of the moon and the cloud. So now I've cut out all the white. You can see it if I pass my hand behind it. And now I'm going to stick it onto my foam sheet, and I'm going to use that as a guide to cut out the foam where those white sections are. So I want to tape it down so that it doesn't shift around as I'm cutting, and then I'll cut using an X-Acto knife on a cutting mat. When I tape it down, I want to try my best to line up the edges of the foam and my template perfectly. And I might even trim one or the other if they are not a good fit, so that they fit together as perfectly as possible. That'll make it a lot easier to get the colors to line up later. So I probably want to put tape all the way around, more or less. If I have areas where the template's cut away, I won't need to tape there. And then just cut out the foam. Alright, so here you can see I have the foam cut out on those white areas, including the moon and the cloud, like the highlights on the wolves. So now I'm going to take this off. I'll have to remove the tape. I already did that. You'll have to pull it off. You can also just cut it. And then I want to place this onto my plate here. I want to be careful about sticking this on and make sure it goes to the right spot. I'm going to need to adjust mine a little bit as I go. But it basically wants to fit like this. Now I can peel the backing off. I need to be really careful while I'm doing this. And now, once I get that peeled, I will try to place this on the backing. Again, I'm really trying to focus on lining up the right edge and the bottom edge of the foam. It looks a little off to me on that right-hand gap, so I'm going to kind of adjust it a little bit, try to get it to lay down a little straighter. And there we go. Alright, so now I have a plate to print my light color, and now I want to make one to print my black. So I'm going to follow the same process. I'm going to tape this down again, and this time I'm going to cut out all the dark colored shapes. In this case I use black. I want to cut around the borders of the black areas, and then I'm going to transfer those onto another plate that we'll use to apply the black ink. So the first plate is to apply the lighter colored ink, and then the second is to apply the darker colored ink. It's okay if the lighter colored ink prints underneath the black areas because it's going to be covered up by the black. So same idea, I tape it on, and then I'm going to cut through the paper and the foam to cut out the black areas. The foam, I'm not going to show the foam cutting, but the foam is pretty tricky to cut. A good strategy is to look at the back and see if you've cut all the way through the adhesive backing. You can also cut from the back side to make connections on the cuts. Especially little details are going to be really tricky, and like the eyes, for example, on this were really hard to cut out because they're little small bits that you have to remove with the X-Acto knife, and it gets quite tricky. So in your design, be mindful of that and maybe plan for that and try to figure out ways to keep your design simple and easy to cut out. Alright, so I'm going to show you how to do the printing process here. I've got two little plexiglass sheets I'm going to be rolling my ink on.
I've got some newspaper to kind of protect my work surface. I'm going to roll the ink on over here and then print on this side. So I'm going to take my block printing ink. I'm going to kind of draw a bead of ink going from the left to the right or vice versa. I just want like a line of ink like that. And now what I'm going to do is use a brayer. That's this roller thingy. And I'm going to, I want to start kind of making little choppy strokes. And the idea here, the goal is to, and I can move ink down if I need more ink. The whole goal is to just kind of get the brayer evenly coated with ink. I don't want it super thick. I want it thin and even. So I'm going to ink up 2 plates for 2 colors. So that's going to be my light color. I'm going to use blue for this one. And you can change the colors from print to print. So that's one of the things we want to do with this. So you'll experiment with different color combinations. Same idea here, just a bead of ink going across. Maybe a little more there. That's great. And now I'm going to start rolling this out. So again, same idea. I want to make like really choppy strokes here. I'm going to adjust the direction I'm going. I'm looking for an even coating of ink all along the brayer here. It's going to be a little harder to tell because I got the black brayer here. But you can kind of tell because it starts evenly coating the panel. But it also kind of makes this Velcro-y noise. The noise helps you tell as well. So again, we don't want it to be too gummy. We want it to be like an even thin coat. And now we can start inking up our panels. So I want to do the light color first. So the way this is going to work is this light one's going to print in blue, and then this one's going to print in black on top. Oh, I forgot my trees. I have to put those in. Hold on. I seem to have lost my trees. That's all right. We'll just print without them. So the black layer is going to go on top of the blue layer. I want to do the blue first. So we'll start by printing the blue. We want to take our brayer, whoops, and we want to just evenly cover the whole thing. You might go off a little bit. That's what the newspaper is for. You want to get an even layer of ink on the whole thing. And this is a little bit like cooking pancakes. The first one might not turn out, but if we keep printing, the ink will kind of build up and give us better results over time, usually. So you just want to make sure you've got a nice even coat all over the foam. It helps if you have a color that contrasts the foam you used, but you'll figure it out. Now, the other tricky part is that I need these both to line up. So I'm going to move this out of my way. And hopefully the right side of my newspaper is still nice and clean. I'm actually going to bring in a sheet of paper. I'm going to position this here. I'll slide this over a little bit so you can see better. And then I'm going to take this and flip it over, try to get it like right in the center. I want maybe a little more border on the bottom than on the top, and then kind of even or close to even on the sides. Now, in order to help me line up the second plate when I print with the black ink, I'm going to kind of just draw the border here, and that'll help me line it up. And if it doesn't line up correctly on the first one, I'll be able to make adjustments. Okay. So now I'm actually going to flip the whole thing, being careful not to let that plate shift at all. And I'm going to use a spoon. I'm just going to kind of use this to rub the paper into the plate here. And depending on if you have a dirty spoon, which you might if you're using my spoons, you might get a little bit of transference. That's okay. You can kind of see the borders here. where it's starting to push into the paper. That's what we're looking for. So we usually use a printing press for this, but for Art 1, so that everybody can print at the same time. And just so you know, the easy home way to do this, we'll just use a spoon. So you want to make sure you've rubbed all over really nicely, and then we can peel the print off. And we have something like that. You can see it's a little bit light. This will probably get darker as I make more prints. I really want for you to make more prints than the required number, so that you can kind of pick your best ones. The idea behind printmaking is you make a bunch of them. You get it to where you can print them perfectly, and then you make a bunch. So now we'll try adding the black layer. Drag this over a little bit, get it a little more in frame. So one of the tricky things about doing two colors is it's going to be kind of tricky to get things to line up. I'm not too worried about most of it. I think the hard part is going to be the eyes. So I don't need to ink this whole white area. I just need to ink the foam that's raised. And I want to be careful when I rub with the spoon, because I'm going to want to try to avoid rubbing any of that ink onto my print. All right, nice and evenly coated. There. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and bring this back over, trying to keep it on the clean part of my paper here. And now I have to line it up. So that's kind of why I traced around the outside. I want to line it up as best I can. That looks pretty good. Once I feel like it's lined up, I'll drop it down, kind of stick it on there. And then I'm gonna flip it over again and go back in with the spoon. And I'm remembering now that all the black shapes I want to transfer are on the lower side of this. So I'm not going to be rubbing up on the top, just kind of the lower half where I know the shapes are. And after I've given that a good rubbing, I can go ahead and peel it, and we'll see how it printed. And there's my print. So a little light on the ink for both of those maybe, but the eyes lined up pretty well. These highlights lined up pretty well. All in all, pretty successful print. So I'd probably continue to do these in the same color, or maybe I'd start using other colors. There's not really a way to clean the plates, so you might have some residual ink from your previous prints. So kind of think about that. You might want to use like similar colors, like maybe I'd transition this blue into a purple from here, or I could potentially do a green, but going into an orange is just going to make brown. So we want to be careful about what colors we use. And that is the basic idea. I'm going to do one more. There we go. Pretty good. Boop. All right, so there are my two prints here. And normally you'd number these. So for printmaking, you'd have like an addition. Like say I was going to do 100, it'd be like a fraction over 100. This would be 1. This would be 2, all the way up to 100. And while it's a little tricky to get everything set up and ready to go, it's a lot faster to make these. So if you are able to sell a lot of similar works that are handmade and individual, you can charge a little less for them and still make the same amount that you would working on a painting or a drawing or something like that. So anyway, that's the basic process. Good luck.